We're in the Gemara towards the bottom of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis. The Gemara here is discussing Taruvas Chametz, when you have Chametz mixed in with other ingredients. And the Gemara brought a machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, whether that's Asur min HaTorah or not. Rabbi Eliezer learns it out from Kol Machmetzes, that it's Asur. And the Chachamim say, no, it's not. He doesn't darshan the Kol. Then the Gemara brought similar regarding the halacha that you're not allowed to be makter, se'er, any chametz on the mizbeach. That's the last thing we learned. So over there it says kol se'er. So we learn out from there that whether it's fully se'er, a full kezayis of se'er, and then it says even miktsasa, you're also not allowed to bring it on the mizbeach. So the Gemara continues on this theme, and it begins discussing over here. There are two big sugyas that we'll be learning today. One is the sugya of heter mitzdaref le'isser, when you have something a half a shear of an isser, and you eat it together with another half a shear of heter, are these two combined to be fully aser? And then the sugya of tam ke'ikr. We'll see here in the Gemara. Let's see. Amar Abava, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, kol isurin shebetayra. When it comes to any isurim in the Torah, ein heter mitzdaref le'isser. You don't combine a heter to the isser. If you're eating a half a kezayis of chayla, for example, and then there's another half a kezayis of regular meat, you're not going to combine it to one full kezayis that you had the right amount that it should be asur min HaTorah. Doesn't combine. But there's an exception to this, two exceptions, or maybe three exceptions. Chutz mi isurei nazir, besides to when it comes to isur of a nazir that may not drink or eat anything from grapes or wine. Shaharei amra Torah, there the Torah says mishras. When the Torah talks about the grapes, it says not to drink anything from grapes, and it says mishras anavim, which would include anything that's soaked in wine, anything that, like if you take a piece of bread and you soak it in wine. So there, from this, the Torah writes the word mishras, I learn out that if the wine is not the full shear, but together with the bread that you soaked in it, it combines to the shear, so then it's going to be asur. Ziri Amar, Ziri adds to this and says, Af sa'ir, bal taktiru. Also when it comes to the isur of not bringing the sa'ir on the mizbeach, so it also combines, even if it wasn't the full shear, it's also going to be asur. So as Rashi explains, this is how he learns out from the pasuk before when it says kol by bal taktiru. The Gemara here says, Keman, according to who is Ziri saying this, Ke Rabbi Eliezer, the Dorish kol. Rabbi Eliezer dashens the word kol. So when the pasuk before said by bal taktiru, and it says kol se'er loy saktiru, so what did the Braisa say that we just quoted before here say? That even miktsasai, that even part of it is also not allowed to be brought if it's se'er. So the way Ziri understands this is, miktsasai means you took a half a kezayis of chametz together with a half a kezayis of matzah in a carbon mincha, and you brought it together on the mizbeach, so it combines together that it is asur. Says the Gemara, if that's where he's learning it out, according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, because it says kol regarding the isser of not bringing the chametz on the mizbeach, lein chametz b'Pesach nami. So say the same thing when it comes to the isser of chametz on Pesach, which is also learned out from what it says kol machmetzes lo yisachelu, and from there we learn out that even if there's a mixture of chametz with something else, that it's asur. So why wouldn't I say the same thing? That even if it's a mixture of a half a kezayis of chametz with a half a kezayis of matzah, that it's also, or any other foods, it should also be asur, according to this drasha that Ziri says. So the Gemara says, you're right, enochanami. The same exception applies regarding chametz. So we have over here three exceptions, by a nazir, by the isser of bringing se'ir on the mizbeach, and also by chametz. Heter combines to isser to make the full size of a kezayis for the isser. We're on the top of Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Now the Gemara explains the only reason that Ziri mentioned the isser of not bringing the chametz on the mizbeach and not the isser of eating chametz on Pesach is because he's coming to exclude from something that Abaye said. The Amar, Abaye says, Yesh haktara lepoches mekazayis. Abaye says the isser of bringing chametz on the mizbeach, it doesn't even have to be a full kezayis. The pshat on what we said before that even miktsasai would be asur means even a mashu, any mashu that's brought on the mizbeach would be asur. So therefore, kamash malon, the aktara lav l'pachas mekazayis. The isser of bringing chametz on the mizbeach does require the amount of a kezayis. However, the chilish of the pasuk when we say miktsasai is that even that kezayis is made up of partially chametz and partially matzah. It does combine together to the isser. That's the chilish that he said regarding the haktara. But really, the same would apply for chametz on Pesach as well. These are the three exceptions. Yasav Rav Dimi v'ka'amala lahashmaita. So Rav Dimi was sitting and he was repeating this chiddush of Rabbi Yechanan. So an Amalei Abai le Rav Dimi, so Abai says to Rav Dimi, V'chol isurin shebetayre, when it comes to all other things that are forbidden, ein heter mitzdaref le'isser, don't we apply the same concept that something which is mutter will be combined to something which is aser to make up the full size? As we'll see later in the end of this blat here, the Gemara is going to say that basically, you should be able to say that just like the Torah shows this to us by a Nazir, why can't I learn it out from Nazir to other Yisurim? The Gemara is later going to actually say a Kal V'chaimer. If this is true regarding Nazir, there's a Kal V'chaimer regarding other Yisurim as well. So that's what Abai is wondering. Why don't I apply this concept to other Yisurim as well? But Tanan, didn't we learn in the Mishnah regarding Truma mixed together with Chulin? So the Mishnah here talks about the halacha of Tumah, when you have Truma mixed with Chulin. So we know that the halacha, the standard of Tumah regarding Chulin, is much less than the standard of Tumah regarding Truma. So what happens when you have a mixture? So first it starts with the halacha of Tumah, and then we'll see how it connects back to the concept of Heter being mitzdaref to Isser. So Hamikpa shel Truma. You have a food which is congealed, let's say a porridge of Truma. So the main ingredients here, the main food is made of Truma. But then you have some spices inside. Vashum, vashemen, there's garlic or oil, shel chulin, that are also inside of it, but that garlic and oil is of chulin. Now, v'noga tful yoim b'miktzosan. A tful yoim, which is a person that went to the mikveh that day, so for chulin, he doesn't make it tameh, but for truma, he would make it tameh. So the question is, the tful yoim now touched part of it, so what is going to be the halacha? Is it all going to become tameh? Is only part of it going to become tameh? Because it's a mixture. So the halacha is pasal as kula. The whole entire thing becomes pasal. It all becomes tameh. Why does it all become tameh? Because the main ingredient, the porridge, is all truma. The fact that it has spices, which is chulin, is much less. So it all becomes tameh. What if it's the opposite? Hamikpa shel chulin, the porridge itself is made up of chulin, v'ashum v'ashemesh shel truma, and only the spices, the oil or garlic inside of it, that's truma. V'nagal tful yoim b'miktzasan, and a tful yoim touches part of it. So here I say, lo pasal ela mokim magoy bilvad. So only that place where it touched, where the tumah touched, the tful yoim touched, it becomes tameh, not anything else. So it really means just a mashur. Literally, that place where you touched, you have to scrape it off, and the rest of it, because most of it, the main ingredient is the porridge, which is chulin, it does not become tameh. But the question is asked on this: Makai magoi amai psula. Even that space where the person touched it, the tvul yom touched it, why should it be pasul? Habatli lahu tavlim beroiv. It's mostly chulin. You just have some ingredients of truma which is mixed inside of it. Shouldn't it be batal beroiv? So, as Rashi explains, the basis of the Gemara's question over here is, the one that's asking the question is thinking that the halacha, when it comes to truma mixed into chulin, is that the truma becomes batal beroiv. This concept is discussed in Mishnayos and in Gemara in many places. What happens if you have truma mixed into chulin? Does the truma become batal beroiv? So as we'll see right here, the Gemara is going to answer that no, it does not become batal beroiv. But the one that was asking the question was thinking that it's batal beroiv. If it's batal beroiv, so then it should be considered to be fully chulin and none of it should become tameh. So Rabbi Baba Chana answered and explained, Matam, you're asking a question, why? If it has spices of truma inside of it, why if you touch it, it becomes tameh in that place? The answer is because the truma is not batal. Hoyel v'zar loika leim b'kezayis. A zar that eats this porridge that only has spices of truma in it, he gets malchus if he eats a kezayis of it. So therefore what he's saying is that truma that gets mixed into chulin does not become batal beroiv. So if it does not become batal beroiv, we apply also to tumah as well, that at least in the place where he touched it, it becomes tameh. We're not machmir so far to say that the whole thing should become tameh, but at least in the place where he touched it, it becomes tameh. So what were the words that Rabbi said over here? Rabbi says that if a zar eats a kezayis of this porridge, which is chulin, but it has spices of truma inside of it, he gets malchus for this. Now, so the Gemara asks, how does he get malchus by eating a kezayis for this? Hey chidami, what did he mean to say by this? Lav, didn't he mean to say mishum de heter mitzdaref leisser? Even though the porridge itself is all chulin, but it's just spices of truma inside of it, oil or garlic, but he's eating a little bit of oil and garlic, which is truma, and then you combine to that also the porridge itself, which is chulin. It does combine to an amount of a kezayis that it's all aser, and therefore he gets malchus for this. So what do I see from here? That I say this concept of heter mitzdaref leisser over here regarding the isser of a zar eating truma. not only regarding the exceptions that we said before, which was a nazir and chametz and bal taktiru. So this is a raya that I apply this to other yisurim in the Torah as well. So the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Loi. That's not the kezayis that Rabbi Bar Chana meant. Rather, my kezayis, when he said kezayis, you know what he meant? The kezayis b'chdei achilas pras. There's enough oil or garlic inside of it that b'chdei achilas pras, the concept of b'chdei achilas pras means that in the period that it takes to eat half a loaf of bread. Half a loaf of bread is considered to be a suda of a person. So as long as within kedei achilas pras, which is different shiurim of how long that time is, it's anywhere from 4 minutes to 11 minutes or 3 minutes to 11 minutes. But if there's enough oil and garlic inside this porridge, enough truma of oil and garlic, that within 4 minutes or up to 11 minutes, you'll eat enough of a kezayis of truma, so then even though it's not fully truma, it's a mixture with chulin, but you're going to get a full kezayis of truma, so then that's the reason why you get malchus over here for this. But not because you're combining the chulin, the porridge, which is chulin, together with the kezayis of the truma. That's what Rabbi Bar Chana meant. Fragt the Gemara, this idea that even though you're not eating one kezayis separately, the kezayis is mixed with something else, but as long as within a certain period of time you're ending up eating a full kezayis, so you would get malchus for this. Is this minat Torah? We know that we use the concept of v'chtei achilas pras, but is that an issa minat Torah? Amalei, so yeah, he answers him in. Rav Dimi answers, yes, this is minat Torah. It's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai for all yisurim in the Torah. As long as it's v'chtei achilas pras, you're going to be over the issa. Says the Gemara, now we come back to what we learned yesterday regarding chametz, the taruvus of chametz. And here the Gemara asks a very basic question. Ihachi, if so, amai pligi rabbanan alei de Rabelaza bekutach habavli. We learned yesterday about the kutach habavli, which is chametz, that's ingredients inside of a dip. So over there was the Braise, where there was machlekes regarding taruvus chametz. Rabbi Eliezer says taruvus chametz is asam and atayra. And the Rabbanan said that taruvus chametz is mutter. So the question is, why are they arguing about this? If you're telling me that there's a mixture of b'chdei achilas pras, that there's enough chametz inside of it, that you're going to eat chametz b'chdei achilas pras of a kezayis, so then why would the Rabbanan say that this is aser? By all these studim of the Torah, there's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that as long as there's enough chametz, or enough of an isser, b'chdei achilas pras, even if there's a mixture, it should be aser. So why would the Rabbanan say that there should be that this is not aser? That's the basic question of it. Really, this is not only a question on the Rabbanan, this is also a question on Rabbi Eliezer, because we learned in the Gemara that Rabbi Eliezer needed a special limud from an extra word of kol to teach me that taruvus chametz is aser. Why do I need a special limud of kol to teach that to me? By all these surim in the Torah, if you have a mixture, so then it's aser, as long as there's enough of the isser inside of it that it's b'chdei achilas pras. So what's the pshat in this? So therefore he's trying to prove that maybe the inyan of b'chdei achilas pras is not minat Torah. That's a unique chiddush only by chametz. So he answers him, Rav Dimi answers back out to Abaye, and he says, Elamai. So what are you going to say? That b'chdei achilas pras is not an issa minat Torah. So going back to the case of Truma before, Elamai, mishum dehetem mitztaref le'isser. So the reason why he's over minat Torah is because I combine the heter food, the chulin, together with the Truma. That's the reason. And in other words, what was the Abaye suggesting? Abaye was suggesting that just like I find this by Nazir, I apply this to all Yisurim in the Torah, that I always combine the Heter to Isser. That's the reason. But in the end, your question still remains. If I do apply this concept of Heter being mitzdaref to Isser in Kol HaTorah Kula, amai pliga Rabbanan alei de Rabbi Eliezer. Why are Rabbanan arguing at Rabbi Eliezer bekutach habavli when it came to the kutach by chametz? If there is such a rule that I apply the Heter to Isser, I combine the Heter to Isser, so the same thing should apply also by Kutach HaBavli, that Rabbanan should also agree that I combine the Heter to this and it should be Aser. So basically, the Gemara is asking here a very basic question regarding Taruvas Chametz. Why would Taruvas Chametz be any different than any other Isser in the Torah? Why don't I say that if it's B'chdei Achilas Pras, it should be Aser? Or if you don't accept that, if you want to go with the other rule, that a heter could be combined to an isser to make up the full isser, and if I say that in Kol HaTorah Kula, I should say that by chametz as well. What was the argument we had before about chametz? Ella, says the Gemara, chametz, the argument they had by chametz is a different story. Hanach lekutach, leave the case of kutach habavli over there by the mixture of chametz. The reason why there's an argument there, the less be kezayis b'chtei achilas pras. Over there is no kezayis b'chtei achilas pras. That's the reason why in that case it's going to be a chiddush that nevertheless, although there is no kedei achilas pras, there's so little chametz mixed in, nevertheless it's still going to be asa. That was the chiddush of Rabbi Eliezer that the Rabbanon disagreed with. So now we understand the whole chiddush of Taruvas Chametz, and this is the way the Alter Rebbe brings it in Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Tov Mem Beis, right at the beginning. The chiddush of Taruvas Chametz is unlike all other Yisurim in the Torah. It's the Isser of Taruvas, of any mixture, is only if you have enough of a mixture in it, of the Isser, that B'chtei Achilas Pras, you'll need a Kezayis. By Chametz, even if you have much less of the Chametz in it, and it's not B'chtei Achilas Pras, still, Rabbi Eliezer says that it would be Aser. That's the Isser over here. Now the Gemara explains, regarding the Kutach, going back to the case of this dip, now if you have someone that's going to drink down this whole Kutach dip, which was not something that was made to drink separately, but it's just used as a dip. But if someone's going to go ahead and drink down this whole kutach dip at once, so he's going to end up eating enough ingredients of chametz within the amount of time of b'chtei achilas pras, so then he's not going to be over this of chametz, because batla daite it's a koladam. The way he's eating it is not the way people usually eat and drink. You don't usually eat this dip, that is. Kasarif, the Gemara even uses the expression of sarif, like he gulps down the entire dip at once, so therefore he's not going to be over the Isser. If he's just going to dip into it the way it's usually used, less be kezayis b'chtei achilas pras. There is no kezayis b'chtei achilas pras. The ingredients of the moldy bread that was put into this kutach is very little, and therefore he's not going to be over the Isser. Okay, so the conclusion of the Gemara here is that we don't apply the concept of heter being mitzdaref le'isser to kol ha'torah kula, but this idea of kedei achilas pras is a rule that's true. It's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai that's true min ha'Torah, and we do apply that to all Yisurim. So the Gemara now shifts over and talks about this concept of kedei achilas pras, and it asks on this from two different places where it seems like it's not min ha'Torah. Eisveis, the question was asked, it says in the Braisa, shtei kedeiris. A person had two pots in front of him. Achas shel chulin, one pot is of chulin, and v'achas shel truma, another pot of truma food. And in front of those two pots, he has two mortars where he's crushing different ingredients of spices. Achas shel chulin, v'achas shel truma. And one is chulin food and one is truma. V'naflu elu l'toich. And from what he was crushing in front of these pots, fell into the pots. But the thing is, he's not sure which one fell into which. Is it the chulin that fell into the chulin and the truma into the chulin? A truma into the truma, that is, or maybe the reverse. Chulin fell into the truma, and then the truma fell into the chulin, and both of his pots will now be aser. So we say mutarin. The pots of food, both the chulin and the truma, are allowed to be used. There's no mixture here. Sha'ani oimer truma l'teicha truma nafla. I will assume that the truma fell into truma, and the chulin l'teich chulin naflu, and chulin fell into chulin. Now this sha'ani oimer, this assumption is a very big leniency. Why would I assume this way? It's not something that I know for sure, but I'm lenient about this. So the basis of this sha'ani yomer is because it's a sveike derabanan. Anytime you have any doubt of any isser derabanan, what's the rule? Sveike derabanan l'kula. So the assumption over here is, because this is a suffix derabanan, I would apply this leniency of sha'ani yomer. So the Gemara asks, so that's the question here. Fragt the Gemara, why is this a suffix derabanan? V'i amrit kizayis b'chtei achilas prasta iraisa. If you're going to tell me that a kezayis b'chtei achilas pras is going to be min ha'Torah, amai amrina shani yomer. Why would I say that I assume that the truma l'toich chulu, that the truma fell into truma and chulin fell into chulin? Why wouldn't I say that even if the truma fell into the chulin, but it's enough that fell inside, that would be b'chtei achilas pras, even though it's a mixture, but it's asa min ha'Torah? He's going to have enough truma inside of it in this. So the Gemara is assuming, since the Braisa makes no distinction about how much fell in. I mean, it really depends what amount fell in. If a small amount fell in, so then maybe there's not enough b'chtei achilas pras. But the Gemara is assuming that since the Braisa doesn't say anything, it means even if a lot of truma fell into chulin, and there's enough b'chtei achilas pras, and still it says that I could rely on this leniency that probably truma fell into truma and chulin fell into chulin. But why am I relying on this leniency? Doesn't that mean that this whole concept of b'chtei achilas pras is only midrabanan? Amalei, so the Gemara answers, no, that case is anyways midrabanan for a different reason. Hanach letrumas tavlin derabanan. The whole chiyuv of giving truma from spices is only midrabanan. In Atayra, there's no chiyuv to give spices from, no chiyuv to give truma from the spices. So therefore, this is a whole truma here is midrabanan. Therefore, I say this leniency of sha'ani yomer. The Gemara brings another question and answer, very similar to this one. Eisvei, another brayso we learned, shtei kupais. You have two boxes. Achas shel chulin, one contains chulin in it, v'achas shel truma, and one contains truma in it. Ulefneim beisoin, and you have two measurements of achas shel chulin, one of chulin, v'achas shel truma, and one of truma. V'naflu elu l'toichelu, and from what you had in front of the boxes, fell into the boxes, and you don't know which fell into which. Mutarin. So I apply this idea. I say it's mutar sha'ani oimer because I assume chulin l'toich chulin naflu and truma l'toich truma naflu. Again, I apply this leniency. If you're going to say that you have this mixture and you're eating enough, so this is asa min ha-Torah, amai amrinon shani oimer. It's a suffix min ha-Torah. Why would I apply this leniency? So here the Gemara answers, not like we said before that it's spices, because it's not spices, but another reason why it's midrabanan. Amalei hanach letrume bizman hazeh derabanan. This brayso is speaking about this mixture that happens bizman hazeh. Trume bizman hazeh is only midrabanan. Now the Gemara comes back to the drasha that Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Yochanan learned out that by Nazir there's a unique concept because the Torah writes the word mishras. Mishras means when you have, let's say, bread that was dipped into the wine. So he said from that you learn out that you combine a half a shear of an isser to a shear of heter to make up the full amount of isser. So the Gemara asks him this, V'hai mishras lahachi yudasa. Is that what the word mishras is teaching me? Hai mi bayale, don't I need it for another drasha that I learn out? Look at the Tanya, it says in a brayso, mishras. What do I learn out from the word mishras? Another rule, which is a very, very general and rule that's relevant in all of the halachas of isser v'heter. Liten tam ki'iker. To teach me that even just the taste of the wine is also like the substance itself. And therefore, Shem Shara Anavim B'mayim, if you soak grapes in water, and there is no substance of the grape that's left in the water, it's just a taste, V'yesh B'em Tam Yayin, and it gets the taste of the grape inside the water, Chayiv. So for a Nazir, it would be asa to drink that water. Mikana Tadan, so this is a new concept. This is different than the concept of heter mitzdaref le'isser. Heter mitzdaref le'isser means I have a half a kazayis of heter and a half a kazayis of isser, and I combine the two together for the full shear. Tam ke'ikah means there is no substance, there's no mamoshes, there's no part of the grape that got peeled off and got left in the water. It's just a taste. And only the taste itself will make the water aser. And then the brayso continues and says, Mikana tadon l'chol ha-Torah kula. I say now the same rule applies to all other isurim in the Torah. Uma nazir, I have a kal v'chomer. If when it comes to a nazir, she'ein isurei issa olam. The isur of a nazir is not an isur forever. It's for a certain amount of time. Ve'ein isurei isur hana. The isur of a nazir not to drink the grapes or the wine is not forever. It's not an Isser Hana, that is. It's only an Isser of Achila, but he's allowed to have benefit from it. And also, a third thing, V'yesh heter le'isudai. There's also a heter for the Isser. As Rashi explains, he can go to a Chacham and be mater his neder, and he won't be a Nazir anymore. Nevertheless, even though you have these three leniencies, also by Tam Ki'ikir, the Torah says that the taste of the grapes will make it aser. Even the water the grapes were soaked inside will make it aser. Kilayim. When it comes to an Isser like Kalayim, which is one of the basic Isurim, which is a much more stringent, and the Gemara points out all three things it has a stringency. She Isura Yisur Olam. The Isser of Kalayim remains forever. The Isura Yisur Hana. Kalayim is also Asa B'Hana. The Ein Heter Yisurai. There is no way of being mat to this Isser. Ein Adin She Asa Tam Ki'ikir. Most definitely you say that the taste of Kalayim should also be Asr like the substance of the Kalayim itself. And then the brayso continues and says, "V'hu adin lo arla." Similar, you could apply by arla b'shtayim, because you have two of these stringencies regarding arla. Arla is a isser that is you can't be materet. There's no way to be materet, and it's also asa bahana. But Rashi says it's not an isser olam because it comes to the fourth year, so it's going to be mutter. So it's not considered to be an isser forever. However, it's not. Taisus asks on that because Taisus says it's true that the fourth year is going to be mutter, but the one of the third year does remain asa forever. So Taisus therefore changes it and says that the pshat in the Gemara is that it is asa forever, but what it means to say is that there's a heter for the Isser, meaning the produce of the 4th year. If you take it to Yerushalayim, you could eat it there, so there's a heter to eat it in Yerushalayim. That's how Taisus learns the Gemara. It's a big discussion in the Rishonim, what exactly the Gemara means here regarding the Arla. So be it as it may, we see here in the Braisa this concept of Tam Ke'iker, and the Braisa goes even further to apply this stringency of Tam Ke'iker to all other Yisurim, like Klayim and Arla. Okay, so our question is, how did Rabbi Yochanan learn out from the same word Mishras to tell me a different concept, that I combine heter to Isser? Says the Gemara, Ha mani Rabbanonhi. This Braisa that we just quoted here is the opinion of the Rabbanon. Rabbi Yochanan, the Amak Rabbi Akiva. When Rabbi Yochanan learned out the concept of heter being combined to Isser, that's only the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So now the Gemara will show us where we see Rabbi Akiva said this regarding a Nazir. Hi, Rabbi Akiva.
One of the coolest things says of it, of course, it's Dosh Yesh Material that we use to make something awesome. Because by a mixture, and a chanami. Correct. It's not really the concept of a mixture. The idea of tam ke'ikir, it's actually a big machlokes in Rishonim about it. Not that you're bringing it up. I hear what you're saying. Okay, it's a good question. So the chayre shows on a kula, but it's over there because it's bottle and there's a way that it could become mutter. So therefore, I don't rely on the bittel. Tam ke'ikir, according to most Rishonim, the pshat is the tam itself becomes the gufa ikir. It's not also because of the mixture of the taste of the grapes that's mixed into the water. The tam itself is the gufa isser. That's the chiddush of the Torah. Although the tam is only the tam, it's not the substance itself, but this is the isser itself. It's similar also b'negeh to the heter mitzdaref le'isser, similar concept. Over there it's actually a machlekes rishonim. What does it mean heter mitzdaref le'isser? So most Rishonim say the heter is not become Isser. The heter remains heter and the Isser remains Isser. Elamai, regarding the amount, the shear, I combine the heter to make up the full shear of the Isser. But the heter remains heter. But other Rishonim say that the heter itself becomes an Isser. And the nafkamina is, let's say you have, going back to the case we had before regarding the piece of bread that was soaked in the wine. So the question is, according to Rashi, let's say only half of your bread was soaked in wine. The other half didn't touch the wine. But if you eat that full piece of bread, the half that was soaked in the wine, and there wasn't enough of an amount for the Isser, you could combine the other half of the bread that wasn't even soaked b'chlal. It could combine together because it's a gzeiris akasav that the heter is mitzaref le'isser even if it wasn't soaked. Tosfos, however, disagrees. Tosfos says only that part of the bread that's soaked in the wine is mitzaref. Another chelik that wasn't soaked inside is not mitzaref because the idea of heter ke'isser heter mitzaref le'isser is that the heter itself is becoming part of the isser. It itself is becoming asser. So that's only if the heter itself was soaked inside the wine. Similar when it comes to tam ke'ikir, so over here, all the Rishonim explain what's tam ke'ikir. The Torah is machadish that the isser is not only the substance itself, but the isser is the tam itself, is also asser be'etzem. Why doesn't this apply to the previous case that we were learning with the Truma, the Tavlin? Tavlin, it gives a tam.
It gives a taste as well.
Yeah,
no.
It gives a taste, so therefore the whole thing is
over there it's substance and that's a different concept. Now, there it's taruvis. That's a concept of taruvis. That's a different Indian.
Why not?
Okay, I'll explain it afterwards. So the Gemara now brings the source of Rabbi Akiva. From where do we see Rabbi Akiva is the shitta that holds that the pasuk over here is going to be used for heter mitzdaref le'isser and not for tam ke'eker. Is it a clear l'chayda? You have a clear Mishnah where Rabbi Akiva says this. And the Mishnah says in Nazir, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Nazir sheshara pitei b'yayin. A Nazir that soaks his bread and water. V'yeshber l'tzaref kezayis, kedei kezayis. And there's enough to combine as a kezayis. Chayiv, you'll be chayiv for eating this. So what do you see here? It seems that what he's saying is that you're combining the bread together with the wine, and that makes up the kezayis. So Rabbi Akiva is saying this idea, that you metzaref, you combine the heter and the issa together. Says the Gemara, no, this lashon of the Mishnah is not a proof. How do you know that Rabbi Akiva, when he says that there's enough of a kezayis, he means that you're going to combine the bread and the wine? Maybe what he means to say is that you're combining the amount of wine that's absorbed in this bread. That's enough of a kezayis. But if you're going to say that it's from the wine alone, so what was the chiddush? You have the amount of wine. What's the chiddush b'chlal? So he says, no, hakamashmalon, the chiddush is the afagav the taruvis, even though it's absorbed in the bread and it's a mixture, nevertheless, it's still going to be yasser for the nazir. So therefore from the Mishnah you have no raya. Ella Rabbi Akiva de Braise. Rabbi Akiva repeats the same halacha, but in a Braise, there it spells out clearly that he is combining the wine and the bread. The Tanya, the Braise says, Rabbi Akiva imen nazir shashara pitoy biyayin. A nazir soaks his bread in wine. V'achal kezayis mi pas umiyayin. You eat a kezayis that's combined from the bread and the wine. Chayev. So then you're going to be chayev. Okay, so from here we see clearly that Rabbi Akiva is the one that says that regarding a Nazir, I combine the Heter and the Issa together. So the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, so now according to Rabbi Akiva that uses the word Mishras to teach me this, so Tam Ke'ikir Minoli. From where does he know the idea of Tam Ke'ikir? In other words, the Gemara had an assumption from somewhere, the Rishonim discussed this, but the Gemara had an assumption that Rabbi Akiva also agrees to this rule of Tam Ke'ikir, that even the taste is also like the Ikir itself. So from where would Rabbi Akiva know this? And says the Gemara, Yalef mi basa b'chalav. Rabbi Akiva learns out the idea that even the taste is asr, like the substance itself, from basa b'chalav. What do you see by basa b'chalav? Lav taime ba'almahu. By basa b'chalav, isn't it just a taste in the mixture, in the asr, and nevertheless it's asr? So hachanami loishna. So I say the same thing also when it comes to other yisurim, that when there's a mixture and it's only the taste that got mixed in, it's also going to be asr. So there's a big discussion in Rishonim regarding this mixture of basa b'chalav. So because when you have milk and meat that mix, so the basar itself doesn't necessarily, there's no actual substance of the basar that goes into the milk, because it's just the taste of the basar. The basar is a piece of meat. The piece of meat is not necessarily a pieces in the milk itself, it's just the taste. So from the fact that basar b'chalav, the milk is going to be asar, I can see that it's only a tam. But the question is, what's in the reverse? The fact that the basar is asar, the liquid of the milk that gets absorbed in the basar, is that considered to be substance of the milk itself? Or is that only considered to be a tam? So in that, it's a big machlokes rishonim, whether that's considered to be tam or that's mamashis. But either way, definitely from the fact that the milk is asr, I see that even the taste itself is also asr, like the substance itself. So therefore I don't need a special pasuk of mishras by nazir. Says the Gemara, so why do the Rabbanan need a special pasuk? The Rabbanan mi basa b'chalav lo gamrinan. I can't learn that from basa b'chalav. The chidushu, the whole idea of basa b'chalav is a big chidush. It's a novelty. I can't learn that from there to any other yisurim. So the Gemara says, umay chidush. What is the big chidush of basa b'chalav? If you're going to say the chidush is the hayl chudei, v'hayl chudei, shari. The milk separately, the meat separately is allowed. Or bahad yadad yasa. Then the Torah comes and says, but if you mix them together, that it'll be forbidden. That's the big chiddush. Kilayim nami. I have another yasa. It's the same thing. Hayl chudei v'hayl chudei shari. Two things separately are going to be allowed. Or bahadad yasa. Kilayim. It's only the mixture that makes it aser. So it's not only basa b'chalav. I see another example of kilayim that's the same thing. So what's the chiddush of basa b'chalav? So the Gemara says no. By basa b'chalav, it's a bigger chiddush. Ella, the chiddush by basa b'chalav is the itarule kula yaima. If you have the basa b'chalav and you soak the milk and the meat the entire day, you pickle it, you soak it 24 hours, even longer. Shari, minatayr, it's going to be mutter. Bashale bishuli, only when you cook it, then it's going to be aser. And so this is a special chiddush that the Torah is telling you, even though once you soak it, to some extent, the milk gets absorbed in the meat, and the taste of the meat goes into the milk. But nevertheless, minatayr, it says lois vashal, that absorption that's there through pickling it is not good enough. It has to be dafka cooking. Dafka by cooking, it's a stronger absorption, and only that is going to be aser. So therefore, this is a special chiddush by basa b'chalav, so I can't learn out from there. So now the Gemara says, if so, does Rabbi Akiva not agree to this, that this is a special chiddush over here? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva nami, you're right. The Gemara says, basa b'chalav v'adei chiddushu. Basa b'chalav is definitely a chiddush. I can't learn out from there this idea of tam ke'ikir. Ella, rather, yalef migiyule nochrim. Where does he learn it out from? He learns it out from the halacha when you buy vessels, pots and pans, or whatever it is, from a guy. So what's the halacha? So in Parshas Matos, it talks over there about the Yidden that came from the war with Midian, and they had the pots and they brought from the Goyim. So Giyulei Nachri means you have to kasher it, you have to, you have to purge it, or you have to taivel it, whatever it is, the different halachas, in order to get out the blias, what it absorbed from what was cooked in it, which is aser. So from here I see that even though what's left over in the pot of a guy, it's actual substance of Isser that's there. There's no substance of Isser. It's just a taste that's absorbed in the walls. And that taste would come out when you cook it, and it's Asr. Giyule Nachrim lav time ba'almahu, isn't it just a taste of us? And the Torah says it's aser. Hachanami loishna. So therefore I could learn out from there to all other Yisurim in the Torah the same thing. Now the Gemara says, and the Rabbanon, why didn't they learn out from there? The Rabbanon, Giyule Nachrim nami chidushu. The Rabbanon say, Giyule Nachrim, that's also a unique novelty, and we can't learn out from there. What's the chiddush that we find by Giyule Nachrim? Because usually, what's the halacha by all Yisurim? Kol noisen tam lepegam mutter. Usually the halacha is, anything that could give a taste would be aser, but not if it gives a bad taste. If the flavor that it gives is a bad taste, so then it's mutter. Right, so for example, the halacha by every Yisr v'heter is that if it's 24 hours later, so it only gives a bad taste, so then it's not aser. So over here as well, the Yisr that there is inside these pots, so it over here, even though it gives a bad taste, nevertheless, you still have to table it, or you still have to purge it. So the Gemara explains, from where do I know that Noisen Tam Lubgam would be mutter? The Gamrinan min Nevela. I learn out from Nevela. What does the Torah say by Nevela? So Rashi brings the pasuk that we had before. By Nevela, you're not allowed to eat the Nevela itself, but you can give it to a guy to eat. In other words, by Nevela, we're talking about something which is still fit to eat, but not if it has a bad flavor. But v'hacha aser, by the Giyulei Nachrim, even if it has a bad flavor, it's still going to be aser. So therefore, it's a unique chiddush. So you can't learn out from the pots of a guy. Rabbi Kiva says, no, I could learn out from the pots of a guy, because he holds of what like Rav Chia berei Rav Huna says. The Omar, he holds, loy asra teire ela bekedeira bas yaima. The whole Isser, when do you have to toivel the pots of a guy? Only if the guy used it within 24 hours. Hilkach lav neisen tam lev gamu. So therefore, this halacha that you have to toivel the pots of a guy, it's actually not neisen tam lev gamu. It's actually fresh flavor that's going to be a good flavor. So there's no unique chiddush that you find over there different than any other Yisurim. So I could learn out from there. The Rabbanan argue and say, Kideide bas yaimeh, when it comes to the flavor that's absorbed in the walls of a pot, Nami loy efshe de loy pagma porta. It's impossible that the flavor is not to some degree a bad flavor. We're not talking about a leftover flavor when you have something that's a substance that's there, that it takes 24 hours to rot or to become moldy. We're talking about a flavor that's absorbed in the walls. A flavor that's absorbed in the walls, even before 24 hours, the flavor is not going to add a good taste. It's going to add a bad taste. So therefore, Taisva says, what he's saying is, if you're telling me that pots, you have to toivel, you have to kasher it within 24 hours, because even though the flavor is not good, even within 24 hours, so then I make no distinction. Therefore, even after 24 hours as well, the Isra still applies. So this is the unique chiddush that you find regarding the halacha of Giyulei Nachrim, and from here I learn out the Kol HaTorah Kula, this concept of Tam Ke'ikr. Okay.